कैवल्य क्लीं कैवल्य
Namaste and welcome to Kaivalya Yoga Gurukulam for the Kaivalya Marga class. We are studying the earth element. Thank you for joining the class. Let us begin this class with 3 ohms. So we are still in Kanchipuram in the Ekambareshwar temple. In the last class, we talked about the Prithvi element and the importance of Prithvi element in the sounds that we hear. How when we make up our mind, we become very judgmental in our thoughts and in our words and in the sounds that we listen. Then what happens is we tend to become more structured. That's why I have this background where there is structure underneath and there is an expanse above. It kind of reminds me of the matrix that keeps pulling us back. Not that it is bad, but it is just if we limit our beliefs, to what we see and experience and taste and smell and say this is it, there's nothing more to it, then what happens is we may be missing the magic of life. And there is so much that happens in our everyday life. One doesn't need to be a yogi or a spiritual enthusiast, if you will, to experience the out of the ordinary, like the gut feeling, for example. You have a gut feeling about something, and many times this has happened. Something about to happen, good or bad, a gut feeling about a person, not necessary judgment, just a gut feeling, a sense of either warmth or a sense of nervousness when you're around a person. Where does that kind of information, how does that kind of information get transmitted to us? How are we able to receive that kind of information? The non-verbal information. That is what we are exploring. That is the magic of life. And if we are able to control that part which seems to be like this coming and going, it doesn't seem to be under our control. But if we can control it, it's called sixth sense, it is called gut feeling, it's called intuition. There are many labels attached to something like that. But in yoga, it is all studied as aspects of one's own mind. The chitta is capable of reaching out because it has powerful tools in its repository. It has the buddhi, which is the intuitive element of the mind. It has the mind itself. It has all the senses. And it has a database of past impressions, not only in this lifetime, of many, many, many lifetimes. So all of that put together makes a very unique energy patterns that can be actually created and pulled out from information from that pattern can be pulled out, which can guide us in our everyday life. So that is what this is all about, to understand where we are coming from, how to enrich our lives, how to live a life more fully, more in a more healthy fashion, and so on. There is very little of morality, if you will, in the path of yoga. In the sense, it's not that you can do immoral things. No, the yama and niyama are based on moral values. But see, the insistence on that moral values is also based on a logical, to a certain extent, logical understanding of why. Now, for example, Prithvi element, once you understand it, then when we say don't judge somebody, now that seems to be like a moral value thrust upon you. But then when you understand that the more I judge, the more conditioned I become. The more conditioned I become, it begins to eventually reflect in my body being conditioned, very structured, very rigid, right? So this is how it's linked. That's why I said it doesn't approach from a morality point of view, or moral values point of view, or a religion point of view. It approaches more from, let's connect to the elements, see the energy of the elements, understand that energy reflecting in my thought, word, and deed, and how can I therefore bring harmony back into my body. In other words, bring harmony back in the elements in my body. And for that, to get that harmony back in, I need to perhaps talk a certain way. I need to perhaps think a certain way. I need to perhaps open up to different dimensions of feeling, emotions, and so on and so forth. So it is from that point of view we approach these subjects. Let's go to the slides. Before I do, I have to, again, another disclaimer. There is a huge storm that is passing by. So in case something we get interrupted, we'll take it in the next class, of course. But sometimes when it gets so dark outside, it's 4:30 and it's really, really dark outside. And so if something goes wrong and if we lose power or something, we won't be able to come back, because I know if power goes on in this kind of situation, it takes at least 2 hours or 3 hours for it to come back. But just FYI, hopefully it doesn't happen, but let's see. Okay, let's go to the slides where we are talking of the Panchabhutas, the 5 elements. We are in this beautiful temple, still in the energy of this temple, in the presence of this temple. So let's take a listen to this video, which takes off from where we left in the last class, where we spoke about Prithvi and sound. We will then explore Prithvi and the other senses. So let's take a listen to this video. The smell that goes into your nose, one can bind you to earth and one can liberate you from the earth. That's why sense of smell has that unique connection with the earth element. If I use perfumes and colognes and my closet is full of perfumes and colognes, how my body should smell and so on and so forth, not that it's bad, I use them myself because I want to prevent body odor. When I teach a yoga class, when I go near somebody, I don't want them to cringe, because so I do use colognes. But over obsession with colognes, over obsession with perfumes means your consciousness is Prithvi bound. That's all. How do you release that? With the help of perfume? Think of incense sticks. Think of scented candles in churches, in the altars when you light an incense stick, in meditation halls, in yoga studios when you light an incense stick. You go and sit with your eyes closed. The incense stick lifts your consciousness above the Prithvi. You feel light, you feel elated, you feel high, you feel, oh my God, this is amazing. Frankincense is an amazing incense to release you from the Prithvi element. Sambrani, as it is called in South India. Sambrani is again a very powerful smoke that not only heals, but then the smell of Sambrani is very healing. It raises your consciousness from the Prithvi and you are able to meditate in peace. So the sense of smell, sense of taste, the sense of hearing, the sense of touch, all of this helps us to understand how much of Prithvi is there in our consciousness. And if there is too much at the end of your day, be assured that you're going to be bound by the earth. Laziness, slowness, sickness, imbalance of Prithvi, weight gain, all of that will bear you down, and will prevent your consciousness from breaking free. Being grounded is good, but don't get so grounded and so deep into the earth that you cannot break free. A tree grows into a beautiful tree because it is grounded.
but all of the tree is not grounded. If you keep suppressing the seed into the ground, it's never going to sprout. The seed is in the ground, it takes a little bit of the ground, forms a firm foundation in the ground, and then it begins to break through. With the help of that grounding, it breaks through. That is why tree is one of my most favorite symbols of spiritual growth, expansion, awareness. And that tree begins to selflessly give shade, oxygen, and so on and so forth. That's why tree is a symbol of Kaivalya Yoga Gurukulam. The oak tree, the banyan tree, and so on. These are amazing trees that gives us these lessons. So stay grounded in discipline, stay grounded in core values. Find what these are for you. I cannot tell you that. That's your homework. That is what you need to meditate in the next few days, the next few weeks. Meditate on what is the earth element in my consciousness. How much of earth element am I indulging in? How can I balance that? How can I reduce that if I want to reduce that? Is it helping me, or is it is binding me down? Senses, sensual indulgence is all water element. Prithvi comes down to earth element, laziness, dullness in your thinking, inability to think clearly. That is why we sit somewhere, we listen to a discourse, and after a while we just nod off, right? Because the Prithvi element takes over. It just can't handle this. Because the rest of the time we are so grounded in earth. When you sit for meditation and you say, I feel sleepy after a while. Why? Because the rest of the day you are grounded, your consciousness is grounded in Prithvi element. How can in your meditation 5 minutes suddenly raise you up? Conditioned music again. If I say this is soft music, I like it. This is hard music. This is not spiritual. All of this is conditioning. That again becomes Prithvi. That is why music is frowned upon in yoga. Not musical sounds, music. Because music is conditioned. This is how music should be. It follows rules, right? It follows conditioned patterns, and you have trained your mind to like a particular music or dislike a particular music. So that training you want to break through. By listening to music in your meditation, you are creating further conditions in your mind, and therefore it is not going to release you. So think about musical sounds. Brain entrainment sounds are non-musical. They are simply sounds of different vibration, constantly, hypnotically, and that helps you break through these patterns of deeply ingrained conditioned mindset.
I'm sorry. So, I'm sorry. So, I, there are quite a few pointers there for food for thought. Especially when it comes to music, I could have raised a few eyebrows, which said, oh my gosh, music is bad, then what about bhajans and kirtan? So hang on to that. We'll come to that in a bit. But before that, let us go to the concept of Prithvi with the other senses, especially with the sense of smell. Okay. So when the imbalance, we are talking about the imbalance of the Prithvi element. So again, don't consider when I talk about these elements, especially Prithvi, because we are so much into Prithvi element, as I explained in the previous classes. This is why I'm pointing more of the, I may seem to be pointing more of the negative aspects of Prithvi, but Prithvi is a very sacred element. So don't ever in your mind think that so I have to get rid of Prithvi. You may have to reduce it. We may have to correct the imbalance. That's how we have got to think. I have to correct the imbalance in Prithvi. So Prithvi and smell, I spoke about body perfumes versus incense sticks or candles. The idea is one gives you that immediate sense of elation, right? And the other one could bind you down to a physical body towards Prithvi. This again, one needs to think about it. I mean, I'm not, these are not ideas that I have which I write in the rock and say this is how it is. But these are pointers that has helped me. Now, for example, when we talk of smell, a divine smell to me, you might say it's my conditioning. I don't know. That's $1 million question. But why I don't believe it's a conditioning, and I'll come to that in a second. Let me mention what that divine smell for me is. Vibhuti, the smell of sacred ash. You could say, oh, you lived with Sai Baba and there was a lot of vibhuti, or you got a Hindu background, so there is a lot of vibhuti in the temples, and so you have been raised with vibhuti, and you apply it on your forehead, you apply it on the body, and so you are used to it, you relate it to spirituality and so on. It's possible. I'm not denying it. It's absolutely possible. But you see, the smell of vibhuti itself has nothing good, and there's no quality as such to it. For example, if I take a body lotion or a cologne, there is a flavor to it, right? You never get a cologne which says sacred ash. I don't think there is one like that. A smell of ash as a cologne or as a spray. So there is really no relevance. I can't relate that smell to something that I've used. But if I take a body cologne, it'll say rose, or it'll say, I don't know, lavender, whatever it is, it's got something, it'll say manly thing, this, that, whatever, right? Womanly, manly, whatever it is. It relates you to some idea in your mind. But ash reminds you of death, perhaps. It reminds you at a deeper level, at a deep unconscious level. Ash reminds you at like the end, right? And so nobody makes colognes out of it. And yet I find that very, very spiritual, very elevating. And for those of you who use vibhuti may be able to relate to that. And there are times in deep meditation, or sometimes in the middle of a worship or a kirtan, you experience a profound vibhuti smell that manifests itself. I've never been able to explain that phenomenon. I've experienced it many times in our homes and in others' homes, in companies when we do meditation. And so it is a very divine smell to me, and that could be a very personal thing. So you may have to find out what benzoin, I think, is that how they say benzoin? Benzoin, I think. Sambrani, as it is called in South India, they use it for temples. So it has a very healing property because the smoke really clears all the insects in mosquitoes and everything, that so you can meditate for a longer time in India, especially. Frankincense is another very spiritual. They say it connects you to other dimension. That means it lifts your mind from this dimension. That's what it is. The idea is there are certain smells that are very unique in its nature. You won't be relating it to body perfumes and smell. It won't remind you of another person or another thing. It'll just simply let your mind float. So that is the kind of smells which are very spiritual in nature. Flowers, when you smell flowers, I'm not talking of perfumes which have flower smell. I am talking of flowers, jasmine, for example. When you smell jasmine, the same thing, the mind elevates. So when you go into nature, and so now you're taking the help of Prithvi to help you rise. It's like a diving board. You need a diving board to dive into the pool. So you use Prithvi to go up. So a sense of smell, you can use it as a tool, as a leverage point, as a diving board to dive into deeper meditation. What those smells will be is a very subjective thing. So I'm not listing it out. I'm just mentioning these for you to consider. Each one of us may have our own. Sandal paste, for example, is sandal, especially is from sandalwood. I mean, it's unethical now, I guess, to get sandalwood or to cut down sandal trees. But then sandalwood was one of those. You do get it in very small amounts. So sandalwood is one of those which, again, just like flowers, the smell from trees. When you go back to nature, without any of these chemicals added, go back into nature and smell. That smell lifts you. The smell of rain and the wet earth. Just as it rains, when you step out and take a deep smell, it's just an amazing smell. It automatically you feel light and very peaceful and calm. So the smell is actually an energy. That's why in Tanmatras, smell is an energy. So consider, just like sound, smell is an energy. That energy can bind you down to the earth, can liberate you to the earth. smell especially is linked to the Prithvi element. So a long short question could be, then can I lose weight by adjusting smells? The answer is yes, but it is a long shot. It is not going to happen overnight, right? You're better off using that in combination with um, all the other steps that you would take in case weight control is one of the objectives in your life. Then you will have to combine it. You see what happens in the days when this was written. Let's go back to the hermitage, to the Gurukula, where the yogis, they lived in nature, right? So those natural smells will not give them this unnecessary appetite, will not put their mind to that laziness and slowness. Because the natural smell, the sounds, all of this will help maintain that harmony and balance in their mind all the time. And that would always reflect in the body. And so I believe, I could be wrong, but it's just my belief at this point because there's no way to prove that at the point in which all these scriptures were written and discovered, there was a civilization far more healthier, far more divine in their approach to life, far more enriched in the way of their thinking, which is why they discovered all the planets and the distances and the diameters of the planets and all of that, right? Everything is documented by whom? By human beings. When? Thousands of years ago. And so, how did they do that? What was their way of life? If that is what we are reading today, and we are trying to take bits and pieces and apply it in our lives today at random, then it may not make complete sense. That's why I said smell can help you weight loss, but then what about the rest of the lifestyle? So that is what it is. So we have to consider all of this in the context of when it was written, how the idea was, and how we can still practice them, but use them with as a supplement to an overall lifestyle. And we are trying to go back to a more traditional lifestyle in the sense where we are in tune with the elements, we are in tune in nature. All of this now I'm talking in a physical sense. But when the smell around you is divine, your thoughts will automatically be in the right place. Your words will come out at the right time, at the right place. So it's perhaps a good idea to have an incense stick regularly in your home and allow that aroma of the incense stick to quote unquote loiter around in your home, because at the back of the mind, smell is connected to memory in the brain. If you get a chance, Google this. I don't want to pick up things from the internet and share it with you. I'll give it, you can do that as a homework. Just put smell memory. You'll see a lot of scientific articles, medical articles, and many of them are very valid. Just to give you an idea, that smell is a very important thing, triggers memory patterns in the brain. And so certain smells that may or not have direct relevance does more than that, right? It awakens your what we have originally forgotten, awakening us to that higher self, to remembering, wait a minute, I am not this, I am more than that. I need to be awakened. I'm asleep, correct? I'm ignorant, sleeping in ignorance. I need to be awakened. So smell can help me. But that same smell can also bind me. So senses are given to us. We can use any of these senses, and the mind, of course, because just the nostrils alone doesn't do anything. It sends the information to the mind. The mind analyzes the information, right? The brain simply receives this. So somebody asked me a question. I don't know in what context. I guess I had read it earlier. When we talk of mind and brain, are they interrelated? Very simply put, brain is the hardware, mind is the software. The brain receives sound waves through the ears, vibrational patterns. It receives colors and light through the eyes. But that's all it does. But there are centers in the brain where the mind begins to operate. So mind is a software that begins to analyze and appreciate. If brain was the one that did it, then your experience and my experience of the senses will be the same. Why would you like something and I dislike the very same thing? Why would you and I watch a sunset and you complain, or you like it and I complain? Why would that be the case? So the mind is the one that brings meaning to the senses, sensory, sensual inputs. The mind is the one that gives meaning to it. So mind is a software. Brain is simply a hardware. It is jada in a sense. Without consciousness, the brain doesn't do anything. Brain, I don't believe brain gives birth to consciousness. It's the other way around. Consciousness is what gives birth to the brain. So senses can bind us, senses can liberate us. So when I say senses can bind you and liberate you, I'm talking of senses with mind and all of this, right? They can bind you to these elements, causing an imbalance in these elements. Or you can use the very same tool to liberate you. A key in your hand can lock the door or unlock, right? Both is responsible with the key. It depends on where you turn it. So Baba would say, you turn the key to one side, it locks you. The other one liberates you. Manasyeva manushyanam karanam bandha mokshayoho. The mind is the one that can take you towards bondage or point you towards liberation. The mind is the one that's responsible. And here the word mind is used along with all the senses. Because mind and senses don't live independent of each other. The mind needs the senses need the mind. So when you say mind, you're automatically bringing senses along with it. The 5 karma indriyas and the 5 jnana indriyas, which we should know by now if you had attended the previous classes, the senses of cognition and senses of action. So consider from that point of view, what smells help you and what smells help you go into meditation. So use those props. Don't get tempted to jump into, oh, these cells are all senses, I want to go into meditation. Use that help. That's why a sense is given to you. Use it. Use a beautiful color to see that which inspires you. Use. At that point, it could be subjective, but use that very experience and transcend the experience. So that brings us to music that I talked about in the video. Music is conditioned sounds. And so I think it is Shiva Samhita or Gerahanda Samhita. I'm not sure at this point. But I think it is Shiva Samhita, which talks about listening to veena and flute are the sins yogi would commit. That seems so dry. The first time I read it, I was like, no, this can't be true. This must be a misprint. How can music be wrong in spirituality? How isn't music the main thing? Yes and no. It's let's go back to that same analogy I used for floats learning to swim, and I think I used it last time. When we want to learn to swim, we need the floats. Floats are absolutely essential. But when you learn swimming, now you want to go into the pool or into the sea and swim, then you need to get off the floats. Only then you can experience the joy of swimming. So it is with music. Music is again a tool that will launch you. Understand music as a tool to launch you. Today, what happens is, and there are always exceptions. In general, what we do is we tend to rely on music to give us peace of mind. That kind of peace is very temporary. And it's not wrong to use it. Sometimes you just want a shortcut. You're so upset and so stressed. You just want some soft music and it reminds you, or a bhajan or a kirtan reminds you, it brings you peace. That's perfectly okay. But to think I have to find peace, I need that music, I need that song to be played, linking your peace to an external sound becomes a problem, because that is going to limit your idea of what peace is, what shanti is, right? How can you transcend? So that is one side of the picture. Then comes proper music. So proper music with rules and regulations and all of that is even more binding in a spiritual sense. I'm talking of a pure spiritual sense. Okay. But yoga and spirituality, they do not frown upon musical sounds. Musical sounds. Everything in nature has a musical sound to it. Birds chirping, very musical sound. The wind, the sound of the wind, very musical. Sound of the waves, very musical. What do they do in the sound? Listen to the sound of the waves. They, for example, sound of the waves brings alpha state, your brain in the alpha state, right? When you listen to a particular sound for 8 to 10 minutes, the brain begins to tune to that frequency of that sound. So birds chirping, little bells ringing, like we did in the meditation class. The idea is those are different frequencies that keeps the mind sharp. It doesn't drift off. Too much of alpha, you can't meditate. You need a little bit of beta in it. It's a meditation is going beyond all these states. Anyway, we'll talk about that when we get a chance more in detail. But the point here is sounds create energy waves in the brain. The brain begins to tune into those frequencies and begins to experience. That's how it translates into experience. The mind here has no way to interpret the meaning of these sounds. Birds, oh, okay, bird sound. I know the birds. There are birds. That's all. There is nothing to really like or dislike about it. Nobody will say I dislike bird sounds unless it's too much of screeching and it's excessive sound. And of course, obviously, it's going to be disturbing. But gentle sounds of birds early in the morning when you practice yoga, sounds of birds in your garden, if the weather permits. Not in Cleveland. You have 6 to 8 months of winter, we don't hear any birds. So we have a huge bird feeder. Just to hear the bird sounds, I bought a huge bird feeder and we get about 50 to 100 birds every morning on winters. Otherwise, it's dead silence. Anyway, so the sound of birds awakens a very different energy in your mind. It takes your mind into that caffeine-less alertness. That is the kind of alertness you need for meditation. Only bird sounds can do that. It's an amazing thing. So I'm working on these sounds. So for meditation, I'll try and bring in these kind of things and introduce them. I'm working on developing these brain entrainment sounds, which are helpful for us, which are hypnotic in nature, which just revolve. And there are quite a few examples, really good examples out there on YouTube and on the internet when you search for brain entrainment. Some of them may help you, some of them may not help you. So there are these are musical sounds, not proper music, because you can't take that sound and say this belongs to Western culture, this belongs to Eastern culture, this is Hindu music and that's Christian music. Brain entrainment sounds are just sounds, musical sounds. Okay, that is not frowned upon. That is considered an important, again, a leverage to take you. Now, when we listen to bhajans, when we listen to kirtans, when we listen to beautiful names being repeated again and again in a kirtan fashion, that is also brain entrainment in a particular way. So it is not wrong. But overemphasis on the music, how do I put this? Will begin to bind you. So let's put it this way. Let us say I begin to learn a kirtan because I love the meaning, I like the energy that it creates, I just love it. Okay, so I want to learn it. And I learn the song on the keyboard, I know which scales to go, I practice it and I got it. So I'm singing, it is in tune with the scale on the keyboard. I'm able to sing it well, I'm able to get the rhythm, the melody, my pronunciations are correct, and I'm able to enjoy that energy. That is a perfect way to transcend use sound, because when I say Om Namah Shivaya in a song matter, then I'm repeating the same thing. I'm creating a vibration using musical sounds into a repetitive pattern. Okay, so Namasmarana and Kirtans done in a repetitive pattern is always nice. Okay, so the other side of it is once I get into this, now if I say, all right, I want to now sing like X. Oh, Shankar Mahadevan sings excellently the same kirtan. I want to learn to sing like him. And I want to bring in more music. And I want to do this. And I want to do that. And now I begin to get distracted from the energy of the sound. And I'm now caught up, just like the smell thing, going into perfumes and colognes and all of that, forgetting what the smell was for. Now I'm getting into the sound. I'm getting into the musical part of the sound. I get entrapped into the music of that bhajan. I get entrapped into the raga and what kind of nuances I can bring in my voice. How can I sing like X or Y? Now I'm comparing this, that. Now I'm bound. Now the energy of the bhajan or the kirtan is forgotten. I'm caught. in that. So understand that all of this up to a certain point helps you. Beyond a certain point, they will hold you back, not liberate you from there. And it is from that point of view I have understood Shiva Samhita and these samhitas, the yoga samhitas, scriptures, when they say don't get trapped by music, by listening to veena and flute, because then somebody is playing according to a certain raga and notes, and then you'll say this is my favorite raga, that's not my favorite raga, and so on. It could trap you. You can still enjoy music. I still enjoy different ragas, but I know that they have a role to play. Beyond a particular point, I don't get engaged into it so much, and it's certainly not my desire or aim to improve a raga and learn more into it and sing and perform. Performance is not my aim at all. My aim is just to create the energy by repeating again and again and again, and simply understanding the basic nuances of how to sing and sing it. Then I use, for my own self, I use the song, the kirtan, the music to launch me into a higher plane. This is what composers of those days did, like Tyagaraja. For those of you who know the Indian composers, because music in India was a very spiritual, has still today, has a very spiritual basis to it. Composition of notes forming into a raga, all of that. But what happens is they would have sung it in a very simple raga, applying the rules, and made it a very beautiful composition. But now scholars take it up and delve into it and prove how much they can improve upon it, and so on and so forth, which is all nice. But again, it's an indulgence. So that forms further judgments about good singing, bad singing, this, that, and so on. And so those kind of judgments slowly again settle into Prithvi. So understand it from that point of view. I hope I made that clear. So Prithvi and taste is also when we have strong likes and dislikes. I'm not talking of addictions here. Addictions come under water element. We'll come to that later. But strong likes and dislikes are Prithvi and taste. Are we free from strong likes and dislikes in our food? Good question. We need to ask ourselves. If there is a little salt that is less, do I get very perturbed? I'm like, oh gosh, I can't feel the salt. I'm so used to a particular one. I can't deal with this food with a little less salt. So that's a strong judgment about what my taste should be is already formed. It's structured, right? I have a certain expectation when I lift a cup of coffee. Then I have a certain expectation that a coffee should be like this. I'm not going to sip a coffee with, say, let's see how this is, and explore it with a non-judgmental attitude. These are not easy things, but I am pointing it out so we begin to live life more mindfully. So we don't jump to quick judgments. Oh, that person's dinner was horrible, I just couldn't stand it, we judge it. We should say, somehow my mind is so judgmental, I'm not able to open my mind and taste that food. I take the responsibility and use that as an excuse to say, how come I am not so open to different tastes? Right? So from that point of view, taste is another thing that we need to consider. Then comes Prithvi and air. When there is constipation, when there is gas, obviously when you pass gas, it smells powerful. When there is foul smell emitting from your body, then you know that there is something wrong with your body. So when there is excess gas that you emit from your body, then know that there is an imbalance in Prithvi. You have to correct your food habits, because we are not meant to be passing gas just only when you go and sit in your toilet seat in the morning. Along with that, you should pass gas. Other than that, you should not be necessarily passing gas. That shows there is excess of constipation or bloating or slowness and all of that. So there is excess of Prithvi there. But there are exceptions. When I use the word bloating, so there are exceptions there. Now, women who have monthly cycles do experience that. Not all of them, some of them do experience that. That is just a passing phase. That is a sign of Prithvi and water becoming very strong at that point. But you got to respect that and take rest and move on with that. So those are exceptions. But I'm talking generally from a health point of view. Constipation, gassy related things are, because gas is related to smell. Constipation again is smell. It's related to smell, because Prithvi gets constipated, becomes more and more hard in your body, you need to free it, right? So these are Prithvi with air that is caused in your stomach region. So it is also linked with Prithvi with fire. Now these are terms I've just used and through them they can be interchanged as well. Because it's very difficult for me. I've tried my best to categorize them, and it can be argued either way. So it's I'm just giving you these ideas. Like I always say, none of these elements exist in isolation. Okay, so it's a mix of all of these. So whenever, in general though, whenever there is illness, there is imbalance in Prithvi, primarily it with fire element, because there is temperature in the body, right? The warmth in the body gets affected, and because of illness you slow down. So slowness and warmth, this is how I relate Prithvi and fire. There are other elements also that get affected, but predominantly look at it that way. These are just giving you ideas to start thinking in those lines. Okay, so don't write anything, write everything on sand, don't write anything on a piece of rock, because be ready to say maybe there is some element of earth in it, maybe there is water in it as well. So it begins, you become more enlightened about what is happening in your body, and you will be able to correct that particular imbalance. So the question perhaps is there in your mind as to, so what is it, how much Prithvi I should have, or how much how much less, or how do I know the amount of Prithvi? So two simple answers to explain this. If you were to ask me this question, if I need to escape from this by giving a simple answer, I would say look at a tree, learn from a tree. A tree could be 60 feet tall. Okay. A banyan tree could be hundreds of feet wide. Does that mean that the roots are also that much deep? A 60 feet tall tree doesn't necessarily have a 60 feet deep roots, right? It has a proportion in the ground. Most of it is above the ground. A strong but an important proportion is in the ground. What that proportion is, you have to decide. You will know it as you go along. Another way to understand this, because if there's too much roots in the ground, then the tree will not be able to grow. In other words, like I said in the video, if you suppress the tree too much, it just won't grow. Right? That's how they create bonsai and all, I think. I'm not sure how they do it, but then they keep that very limited. They don't let it grow. That's artificial, I think. I'm not sure whether bonsai is a real thing, or is it's been cultured and made. But nevertheless, just thought just passed my mind. But tree in general, if you restrict the growth of the tree, then there'll be too much of earth that will hold it back. It will not let it grow. Always see if there's a healthy tree that you can look at, a healthy plant that you can look at, whether it's a flowering plant, a rose plant. Look at the size versus the roots, and you'll be amazed at how little is the proportion of its existence under the ground, and how much more is its existence above the ground, how much more beautiful. So there is, what do I mean by that? So we need Prithvi in our bodies, we need Prithvi in our mind, we need Prithvi in our consciousness, we need core values to anchor us. Without that, we'll be all over the place. All over the place. We need that. But those core values can gently, over a period of time, undergo changes. For example, what is love? Love could be a core value that can guide you throughout your life. Right? I've not yet come across anybody who says I don't believe in love. Love is a core value. What is the definition of love changes from person to person, age to age, culture to culture, right? It changes. So, and that's okay. And that same person who's defining love today, after 20 years, would be defining love in a different way, because life has taught him or her in a different manner, and slowly that definition has changed. The value has not changed. The value still remains love. The definition of that value has changed. So, core values, we need it. We need core values. My wife and I, we make it very simple. We follow the 5 core values that Baba gave us. It makes it simple. But we keep redefining those values and we keep understanding those values, not necessarily in an academic sense, but I guess when situations present themselves to us which tests our core values, then we begin to understand, wow, I thought it was this, but this it is more than this. Or it's a different way to look at what truth means, what righteousness or right conduct is. What is my dharma, swadharma? What is my concept of love, my understanding of love? What is my understanding of peace? What is my understanding, my definition of non-violence? So Satya, Dharma, Shanti, Prema, Ahimsa, these are the core values for me that is form my foundation. These are the roots under my tree. If you dig deep into my unconscious, you will find just these. But I have changed my definition over a period of time. I have changed it, and I'm open to change. I don't do it at a conscious level, but at a deeper level. As I begin to live life more in integrity, and make these core values an integral part of my life. That means I feed in from those values. The tree, however big it goes, the core values, the roots are not seen under the ground, but then it keeps drawing energy from the roots. Otherwise, a tree will die. So you need something to keep you anchored. For me, those are value system. That's what I mean by core belief system, core value system. There has to be something in our lives, and we all have something, right? We do have families and all of that that anchors us. That is at a more superficial level. I'm talking of a more deeper spiritual and individuals level. If you go deep inside and say, what are my core belief systems which anchors me? And if I don't find that, I need to define that. And then in a spiritual lifestyle, if I want to grow spiritually, expand my consciousness, I need to draw energy from those values and shape my thoughts, my words, and my actions in tune with those values. I need to. If I don't, then I'm all over the place. Then I've just become, it's like a directionless. All these elements go imbalanced, and then they're all over the place. That is all over the place. There could be momentary happiness, momentary joy, momentary, but what we are looking for, that eternal sense of peace, prashanti, the eternal sense of existence of the Brahman, the expansion of consciousness, the sense of divinity, proximity with the divine God principle, all of that, I doubt if that will happen without being anchored in core values. Even Ravana, in the story of Rama, he had core values. He broke some, and that's why he met with that end of his, right? He had some weaknesses and so on. So one need not be perfect, but then one need to have a certain set of core values, a strong belief system, and then allow that belief system, just like roots under the ground are not fixed, they continue to grow, but that growth is very gentle, slow, and every time they go deeper and deeper into the ground, the tree gets stronger and stronger and able to become more wider and grow much taller. So understand that. So the best way for me to understand Prithvi from a physical point of view is keep my weight under control and watch what I eat. The best way for me to understand Prithvi in my consciousness is to examine my core values. What are my core values? I need to find that out. You need to find that out. And then write them down, let them sink in. We all know it. We just have to go within and seek those core values. And the third thing is bring this into action. Otherwise, like I always keep saying, we become philosophers and we'll not experience anything. And putting these concepts into action, these principles into action, is the toughest part, especially the value part of it. when we begin to integrate values into our lives and begin to put them into action, such as being non judgmental, if that's one of our values, as part of love. Because if you judge somebody, you cannot love them. So I'm not going to judge anyone. I'm going to accept people as they are. I could be critical of their actions, like we spoke about it last time, but I don't have to judge a person or a circumstance as good as bad or good or bad. And so once I begin to live like that, I speak on those lines, and then I become very mindful of every text on the phone, every word that comes out of my mouth. I become very mindful of what kind of sounds I allow into my consciousness through my ears. That is not easy, but that's what makes life so fun, and so much of this that makes spirituality an adventure. Another way to look at it is look at your fingers. It will tell you how much of Prithvi you should have. What was the Prithvi that we studied when we started this? We did the Panchopachara chant or the worship. Prithvi was the little finger, is the little finger. This is the importance of Prithvi in our consciousness. This should be the importance. Whether it is in the body or in the mind, generally, Prithvi's importance is this much. The 5, the weakest link is the little finger. Is my life is Prithvi like this or like this? I need to ask myself. And the more I transition from Prithvi being strong like this or like this, these are all strong fingers, from this to slowly to the little finger, where even if something, God forbid, happens to this little finger, I can still function. And I can still write, I can do everything without this little finger, almost everything, right? That is the importance of physicality given in other words, material existence itself. Given, that is the importance given to material existence. That is the importance given to physical nature of things in yoga, in traditional yoga. So in every asana, therefore, we find our anchor. So let us watch this last video, and I think that talks about this. And what I will do with this last video is we'll bring this matter at this point with the Ekambareshwar temple. We'll talk a little more on the Mula Bandha, and there are a couple of more points that I want to talk as far as the Prithvi element for this phase of learning, and then we'll move on to the next element. But before I go to that video, which is about 2 or 3 minutes, so we have a couple of minutes to spare, I want to also give you a little tip on, because health is an important aspect of our life today. One way to know if Prithvi is balanced in your body, and this may be a little gross when you listen to it, but there is no choice. Okay, so think of me as a doctor talking to you, a medical doctor. I am not, but it's from that point of view. What is that? The size and the quality of your feces, poop as we call it in a casual way, childish way. The size and the quality of the human feces gives you a direct feedback, the most honest feedback, the best feedback for you to know about the quality, the quantity of Prithvi in your body. If there is too much water in the human feces, then that's a bit too much of water. When it is, in other words, if there is like diarrhea, for example, it means obviously you're sick, right? Diarrhea and loose motion is, after a point, it becomes dangerous. So the motion should not be loose. It should not be too watery. Is it too hard and too small? The size of the feces itself, if it is very small and if it comes out in bits and pieces, again, is not a good sign. So ideally, what is it? Ideally, it's semi-moist. Think of it like a clay, right? And let me talk in terms of dog poop, just to make it a little more relevant. When we used to walk our dogs, I would look at the dog's poop and know that he is doing well, just like I look at my poop. And so incidentally, you should look down at your feces in the morning, because that is the best way to know how you are, how's health going on inside your gut. Because if this is healthy, the entire body is healthy. Take it from me. Okay, so the dog poop, if I was able to pick it up, and because in the US here, you have to pick up after your dog, you just can't walk away. So when we would pick up the dog poop, of course, we have a plastic cover, especially for that. So when you pick up the dog poop, those of you who have pets know this, when you pick it up, if it's hard and firm and easy to pick up, you know that the dog is having a healthy gut, a healthy intestine, and therefore he's healthy. The eyesight is healthy, everything is healthy, skin is glowing, everything is healthy. Same thing applies to us as well. Same thing applies to us as well. In addition to that semi-moist in the human feces, one very important thing is the size. It's called the size of the turd. How big is the turd? You've seen a long banana, right? Which is about 6 to 8 inches. Consider the size of your poop, at least the first or the second one that comes out of your body should be at least 6, 8, 10, 12 inches long. If it is not, then adjust your diet according to get that. In other words, you have to bring in fiber into your diet. You need to have proper fermented products in your system so they get cleansed, and the everything is represented in the human feces. So I know, like I said, the disclaimer was put out there already. You must be lucky I didn't bring any pictures to show you how a human feces will look like. But you can do your own research. The size of the human turd, as it is called, is the best indicator of the health. The longer they are, the more well-defined, more firm they are, the more longer they are not dry. You shouldn't find it difficult for it to come out, because that's not a good sign. It should be easy for the passage of the human feces out of your body. At the same time, it should be one long or two long turds. That'll empty your stomach right away. So consider that and adjust your diet accordingly. Of course, all of this, in case you're much older and you have other issues, you can't just add fiber to your diet blindly. You need to consult a physical medical practitioner. You have to consult with your doctor. But I'm giving you these in general. If any of you don't have any medical problems, and if you want to live a healthy life, you want to know what is going on in my system, the best way is to watch the quality of your human feces, of your early morning, every morning when you empty the bowels. Look down before you flush the toilet and observe the quality and adjust your food and habits accordingly. So that will automatically, because when we come to the fire element, I'll talk more about it. Because if this is healthy, trust me, the whole body is in a great shape. The mind is in a great shape. Everything else falls in place, including the quality of your meditation, including the effect of the bandhas, the movement of the prana, all of this. It's all related to the body. So we are not talking of something so mystical. It is all comes down. That's why I keep saying body is a reflection of all of this. So if I correct the reflection here, I can slowly go back. The reflection gives me a feedback, just like a mirror. You look into the mirror, you find something wrong, you haven't combed your hair. You don't go adjusting the mirror, but that feedback you take and then you adjust your. So the poop, you can't do anything to the poop, but then that gives you a reflection, a feedback. Based on that, I will adjust my food habits and so on. Timings of food, the kind of food. Should I have too much fiber, too less fiber, whatever it is. Think about that. So we'll examine food and health more. But all of these is merely to open your thoughts and your minds and to start thinking in these directions. So hopefully this was helpful. We'll watch this last little bit of video in that long one session that I spoke. I split it into so many pieces. This was the last bit. So allow me to offer that, and we'll bring this class to an end. Let me get out of the way.
Finally, in your yoga practice, the asanas are strongly Prithvi oriented because it deals with the body. Asanas and kriyas are two different things. We'll talk about kriyas later. Asanas are where you become steady in every pose. I take a pose and I become steady in that pose. I become the Prithvi in that pose. And then I move out of that, go into the next pose, become steady in that pose. I need to understand understand the Prithvi element in every pose. The steadiness, the stillness, like a rock, I become one with the pose. Sthiram, Sukham, Asanam, Patanjali describes that which is steady, that which can hold with happiness, that becomes the asana. So, in our practice, if there is an excess of earth element in our body, meaning if I've got heavy hips and legs, and if I want a freedom, or if I have a lower back problem, which most of us have, these are all excess of Prithvi. Inaction, inactivity, all of that is Prithvi, right? Lack of exercise is Prithvi. So if I want to get rid of that or control that, I need to have hip opening routines, earth opening routines that open up my legs, not just move my back this way and this way, but open up my legs sideways. So I need to lift my leg up straight, open the leg to the side. All of these free movements of my hip has to begin. So think of hip opening routines focused around the Muladhara chakra. I'm purposely keeping Muladhara chakra out of this discussion. We'll come to that. There is a planet associated with the Prithvi element, the Muladhara chakra, and so on. For this class, understand this and begin to incorporate these into your life. Prithvi, the sense of smell, anus, Prithvi in my food, Prithvi in my thoughts, Prithvi in the sounds that go into my ears, Prithvi in the sounds that come out of my mouth, Prithvi in the smell, Prithvi in my touch. How much of Prithvi, how much of the earth element do I have in my consciousness? How much of it holds me back? How much of it helps me stay grounded? And how much of it helps me with that grounding to go up further and elevate my consciousness? My dear friends, this is such a great honor to be seated in such a holy place, Ekambaranathar temple, thousands of years old. This temple alone is about 30-40 acres big. That's how huge this temple is. For thousands of years, these sacred teachings such as these began here, was taught in these very precincts, and I'm grateful that I can afford this little camera and I have a mouthpiece that can never stop once I start talking, and this urge to share. All of this is a blessing, I feel, and so I feel very honored to be doing this from these sacred temples. For now, we will stop here with the Prithvi element. There is so much more to learn. We'll revisit this again and again and again in all our practices, because once you understand the 5 elements, the sense organs that are associated with the 5 elements, and how those 5 elements, how do I bring it into my everyday practice? How do I become mindful of every act, every thought, every word I speak is associated with some element. Every sound that I utter is associated with some element. And if I'm able to understand that and then function with that, I will be able to harness these universal energies to my benefit. I can create health, I can create wealth, I can create a physical reality the way I want. This is where siddhis come from. This is where the energies of the universe you're able to tap in. There's nothing so far out mystical or voodoo about it. There is a science in this madness, if you will. The only element of faith is for you to believe that all of this is part of one consciousness. All these 5 elements. The earth, water, you see the earth dissolves itself into water. You see that happening in global warming, right? Water is taking over the earth. And then it becomes so warm that the water will evaporate into fire. And then the fire will become pure gas and air, and all of that will get absorbed into space, and space itself will get finally absorbed into the bindu, into that one spot, beyond space, beyond time. Like we talked about in the Om, that one spot, the Kaivalya, the Shiva, absorbs all of this consciousness into himself, and we get a taste of that in deep sleep. In deep sleep is a sign of the earth element, and in the bowels of the earth lies, below the earth there's wetness, there is fire, there is everything is there below the earth, right? Lava, mountains, heat, fire, all of that is there. So the 5 elements go up this way, the 5 elements go into the earth this way. So as you go deep into your sleep, you have a chance to experience a little bit of what that state of Kaivalya is, where the I does not exist. Thank you for watching. Thank you for your patience. May the universe guide you to understand more of this Prithvi element. And may the Namah Shivaya mantra, it's mantra because Na, Ma, Shivaya, the Na, the Prithvi element, may that awaken, guide you. May Prithvi, the goddess, the deity, the energy of Prithvi, awaken us, connect us, and bless us with the divine energy. So being grounded in Prithvi, like a tree that sprouts and reaches out to the sky, we too can take our consciousness all the way up to the Sahasrara and reach out to the Shiva consciousness. Om Namah Shivaya. Om Kleem Kaivalya Om.
Let's bring this class to an end on that note with one Om and three Shantis. Thank you for watching. Thank you for inviting me into your homes. Until we meet again, stay blessed, stay inspired, stay safe. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti.